Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and thanks for tuning in. I wish I had a little more progress on the addition, but things have been a little slow around here for the last month. Once we get into the Christmas season, my parents have a lit Christmas trail through the woods, so I help install Christmas lights. Now, with 2020 being a heck of a year, they've decided to move all their Christmas lights up to the barnyard. So they do a Christmas display on the barn, they set all the lights up to music, and I help out with the programming. So the vehicles can drive up, you can tune in your radio, and you can watch the lights go to music on the barn. That's something cool we've been working on. And like I say, it takes up a little bit of time from here, and that's where we're at. While taking a break on working on the addition, I've been going through some bookkeeping, looking at some invoices, some receipts, and all the paperwork that comes with a project like this. And I got thinking this might be a good time to create a video that's going to share some of our cost-saving techniques and explain a little more of the building process that we haven't explained in the past videos. Now, not all these techniques are going to work on every project, and they're not always going to scale up or down depending on the size of your project. But to give you an example of what we're working with here, the garage itself is 26 feet by 36 feet, and we're just shy of 1,000 square feet. Most of my background is in engineering and construction, but that doesn't mean a project like this comes easy. There's always changing building codes, materials, and techniques. In order to keep up with all this, I reached out to friends, family, local contractors, staff at building supply stores, and even YouTube to see different opinions, different views, and different materials. So to get started, we had to know what we wanted to build. Jill and I sat down and we did quite a bit of research online. Now this took quite a few weeks over the winter. We would go on to Pinterest, we would go on to other sites, look at blueprints, even looking at different real estate listings. We could see what we liked in a house and what we didn't, and decided what we wanted to build. Once we got our thoughts together, I was able to draw them up on the computer, and then we could see what our vision was going to look like. I was then able to take these drawings and pass them on to an engineer. The engineer was then able to stamp these drawings. Now this process was actually quite quick. Since he knew exactly what we wanted and had all of the dimensions, he just had to go through and figure out a few beam calculations and a little bit of the roof layout, and it was all finalized. So quite a few hours of design time was saved, which means quite a few $100s was saved just from us going through and doing a lot of the legwork. Now a lot of this design stuff you can go online and you can learn yourself using Google SketchUp and other free software. Now that the design is all complete, it's time to start a budget. Now one tip here is to go to your local building center. They usually have at least one person on staff that can help with the design, planning, and costing of a project just to get your business. Now, usually there's no fee involved in this, and their expertise is very helpful. Another great tip is when you're talking to these guys, mention contractor discount. Usually, if you can bring in enough volume sale for your project, they can give you a 10% contractor discount. So the next step was to get our permits, and to start that, we had to get our septic permit. A septic system is sized depending on the size of the house. Since we were adding space, like bedrooms and an extra bathroom, we needed to make sure that our existing system was big enough to handle the new capacity. Fortunately, the local health authority had a copy of the records of the existing septic system, and they were able to take our drawing and compare it to the system that we had, and they were able to deem that it was suited for our new construction. With the septic permit complete, we were able to get our building permit. And like with all building permits, that was on condition of all of our inspections. So some of these inspections include when the hole is all dug, when all of the cement is poured, when the framing goes up, when the insulation goes in, and then a final permit or inspection for occupancy. This just ensures that we're taking all the correct steps and we're following all the local building codes and that we're building a safe house. So adding up all the engineering, the septic, and the building permit, that brought all of our permit fees up to $2,700. Now that the permits are complete, we can start digging the hole. Have you ever wondered why most Canadian houses have a basement? The short answer is the frost line. The frost line is how deep the soil freezes in the winter. If that freezing happened below our footing, it would have a negative impact on the structural integrity of the foundation. Other things you might see is cracked drywall or shifted windows that don't close properly. Since you have to dig the hole anyway, it's a lot easier to build up than it is to build out. So if you're digging a hole, it's a lot cheaper to put in a basement. In our case, having a slab and cars parked over top, it would be cost prohibitive to make the slab or the floor strong enough to support the weight of the vehicles and have living space underneath. So we chose to backfill the hole with sand. So we use sand because it's readily available, it's pretty cheap, and it packs really nice. Now, the only thing with packing the sand is it has to be done in small layers. This was one of the problems that came up. Do we rent, do we buy, or do we hire it out? Looking at rentals for a plate packer, they were around $500 for 2 weeks. Now, we could run that cost down a lot cheaper if we did everything in a weekend, but packing all this sand and moving it all wasn't going to be a one-day job. So looking at the rentals, $500 for a plate packer, we were able to find one and purchase it for under $400. Now that we have the plate packer, we were able to use it for packing the sand, and now if we want to recoup our cost, we could sell it afterwards, or we can use it on future projects. To dig the hole, we had a neighbor in the area with some equipment, and he helped us out. To do some of the fine digging, I used the tractor and the backhoe. Now the tractor and the backhoe I purchased separately last year at around 50% under market value because they both needed repairs. But those are the deals I like looking out for. I'm able to put them in the garage and work on them over time and source some parts, and now they work as good as new. Since the tractor and the backhoe are substantial equipment, but they are a long-term investment to the property, I'm not going to include them in the costing. You can expect if you had to rent some equipment and operate it yourself, you'd be around $1,500, or if you wanted to have somebody come in, you could double that cost. So now that the hole is dug, it's time to start forming the footing. All of this can be found on the engineer drawings, such as the size, specifications, and where it needs to go. So I got all the forming done, we added some rebar, again per the specifications from the engineer, and then we were able to pour the cement. I picked an afternoon where I had a couple friends and family available, and we poured it in a couple hours. Between the forming, the rebar, and the concrete, this cost came up to $2,800. Now that the footing was complete, we were ready for the foundation wall. We chose to go with a block foundation. The other option is you can go with a poured wall. The poured wall is really nice, but it takes some proper forms or lumber to do it, and it does take a little more labor. We didn't have the time or the resources to do the poured wall, so that's why we went with the block wall. My grandfather was a stonemason, and I'm sure you've seen him in most of the videos, and he's been a huge help for this project. So the block for the project cost $1,430. Then we need the cement to put it together. That is called the mortar. Now we could go to town and buy it all in the pre-mixed bags, but we chose to mix it ourselves. So called up and ordered a couple yards of sand that they delivered with the dump truck, and I bought some of the mortar bags in town. By mixing this together, we were able to save a couple $100. Next, we framed the first floor and added the floor joists and subfloor. This created a roof overhead to pour the garage floor. If the sun was out and too hot, or if the weather started to rain, it could ruin the finish of the garage floor, so we wanted to get it covered first. So now that it's covered, we had to prep underneath the floor. So this included laying down our insulation and installing our in-floor PEX tubing. This in-floor PEX tubing I highly suggest to anybody pouring a slab in a house, or a garage for that matter. The cost is only a couple $100, it's very easy to do it by yourself, and when it comes down to it, if you ever wanted to install in-floor heating, the pipes are there. It's something you can never go back and do later. So for the insulation and the PEX tubing, we were about $1,200. So with the in-floor prepped, we were ready to pour the slab. Now, this was the very first thing we contracted out. It was one of the very few things that we did contract out, but we had to weigh out between the time, the cost, and the experience. In this case, hiring a contractor hit all of those points. They were able to come in, pour in the morning, and when I got home from work that night, we had a curing floor. Between the cement and the labor, we were $5,300 to have the floor installed. If anybody was keeping an eye on the news, you could see lumber prices went up almost 300% in the summer. And that was right during the middle of our framing. Now, one of the things we did is we knew we were going to build this year, so we had time to look out for deals. And last year, at the end of 2019, there was a local lumber yard going out of business. So not only did we get 2019 lumber prices, we got it 30% off. Now, we could say it's a good deal now, looking back, but we never knew what the future was going to hold. We never knew that the prices were going to jump in 2020, but at the time, we did know what the lumber prices were, and we knew that 30% off was a good deal. Looking back, we saved a ton of money by doing it this way. Just storing it for the winter wasn't a big deal, and we easily saved $2,000 or $3,000. So with that being said, the total lumber cost for the house was $7,800. Now, we also have to add the floor joists and the trusses on top of that. They were $11,200. Now, the one thing to get the truss price down, I was able to talk to the engineer and work with him a little bit. He had a couple designs that looked pretty cool, But after speaking with them, we realized there's a lot of cost savings if we changed it up and made it a little simpler. Those changes alone saved us $3,000. In order to install the trusses, we rented a telehandler from a local supply. This machine was about $500, but we wouldn't have been able to do it without it. Now that the trusses were finished, we were able to install the steel roof. Now this is one of the things I was going to contract out, but after calling around, everybody was booking into the spring of 2021, and I didn't want to wait that long. So working with the local hardware supply, they were able to help me out, come up with a steel package for the roof. That steel package came in at $5,300. About half of that was the steel, and the other half was the screws and all the trim and accessories to go with it. Since we were installing the roof ourselves, I wanted to get the right equipment, so we rented a lift for the month. It turned out this lift was super handy, and we ended up extending that rental for another month. The total lift rental was $2,000. We used this lift to not only install the roof, but the soffit, the fascia, the windows, the siding, and the stone. It saved us a lot of time that we were running out of, as I wanted to get this whole addition closed in before winter struck. The aluminum, soffit, and fascia came in at $1,200. It was all common stuff that we could get at our local supply in a chocolate brown color. To install the eavestroughs, I wanted to go with a seamless gutter. That means I didn't want to buy the 10-foot pieces from in town and install them. I wanted it one continuous piece from one side to the other. And there's a lot of companies that will come out and do this. I was able to find one company that was able to come out and they roll out all of the eaves trough right in the driveway. That means they got a roll of flat aluminum that they roll out through a machine that presses it into an eave trough shape. It is about $600 for the eaves trough. Talking to the guy, if we wanted it installed, it would have been double that. The next item to purchase was all the windows and doors, and this can be a tough one. There's a lot of different factors that affect the price. One of the biggest things is the color. We wanted to go with a chocolate brown color to match the rest of the existing house. But at the back of the house, you never see it. So the back 3 windows and the back door, we ended up going with white. Just changing the color like that helped us save over $1,200. Windows and doors is another big thing where you can spend a whole bunch of money or you can spend a little bit of money. We chose to go with the mid-range. We wanted something that was going to seal up, we wanted a good quality window, but we didn't need to spend the money on the 3-pane glass, but we didn't want to cheap out on single pane and have drafts blown through. So we worked with our local building supply a little bit on this one, and we came up with a package that fit our needs. The front window of the house, being the trapezoid, I was a little concerned about the pricing. I was able to draw 3 different shapes, and we were able to pick the one that was the least amount of money. Fortunately, the one that was least amount of money was the design that we both liked. By doing these 3 different shapes, we realized we were able to save a couple $100. So the total cost for all the windows and the doors, not including the garage doors, was $8,400. Now the garage doors themselves, they were a little bit of a splurge. We knew they were going to make or break the house, so they were a custom mortar garage door. They are 8x7, and of course we had to order 3 of them. They have the windows installed, and they have the wrap on the outside that matches a wood grain look. These garage doors, again, we got on sale at 15% off, but the total price for them was $5,400. Now before we finished the exterior, we wanted to insulate. We chose a rigid insulation that was to go around the whole outside of the house. So by putting the insulation on the outside, it helped to create a blanket. Now, this isn't going to be the only insulation. We will insulate between the studs in the future, but the exterior has to go on before all the siding. The exterior insulation cost $2,000, but this is something we hope to recoup in the near future from heat cost savings. Finishing off the exterior of the house can be a very expensive part of the project. You can easily spend tens of thousands of dollars to add whatever you wanted to the outside, whether it's vinyl, or it's wood, or it's stone. We chose to go with the best of both worlds, and we used vinyl siding, which is very inexpensive, to around 90% of the house, and then we chose stone in specific areas to create a little bit of a pop and to match it to the existing house. We installed the vinyl siding, and it was about $5,700 to do 1,900 square feet. Now compared to the stone cost $4,900, but it only did 300 square feet of the house. You can see right away why we didn't choose to do the whole front of the house in stone. It was definitely talked about, but we knew we had to cut costs somewhere. One of the very last things that I forgot to mention was the driveway. It is something that's very easy to forget, but we have to get a driveway to this garage. Now, we had to get it all dug out and we had to get stone brought in. The tractor and backhoe worked quite well to do some of this, but it's quite a bit bigger task than what that was made for. That was another part of the project that we had to have contracted out. We had a local excavating company come out. They were here for about a day and a half with their big backhoe. They were able to dig it all out and bring in a bunch of stone. So in total, all the driveway and stone costs was right around $5,000. So as you can see, this is the running total of the project. Now, there are a few things that didn't fit that category, which I will list right here, and I will add them to the total.